If the Sun Belt wanted La Tech in, wouldn't they be in? It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sun Belt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, a little bit late-ish on a Wednesday. Sorry about that. Not sure I was going to do an episode. There really wasn't any news, but we're rocking and rolling so much we might as well do one. And a little bit of news at the end, actually heading to New Orleans. So we'll get into that as well. And then the divisions or no divisions. I'm pro division, so we'll get into that as well. And also getting in on the action was Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger. We know him from when he covered LSU for the Baton Rouge newspaper. All right, so Pete Thamel was the one who started this, along with Kyle Bonagura, more than a couple weeks ago, about Texas State moving on and La Tech replacing Texas State. The Texas State portion of the show has happened. The La Tech has not, all right? ECU was kicked around a little bit, and Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee was discussed. We mentioned that La Tech was being blocked, does not have the votes. That's where we stand as of right now. So Brett McMurphy's been going on. The whole La Tech is about to get invited. Ross Dellinger popped in yesterday at 7:45. He tweeted out, Sunbelt executives held a meeting, it would have been on the 1st, over expansion, but no decision is imminent. Sources tell Yahoo Sports. The league will continue discussions on adding a member or staying at 13 schools. Several possible expansion targets were discussed, most notably Louisiana Tech. While remaining at 13 schools means a slight increase in revenue distribution with Texas State's exit, the decision comes with complications, including the potential elimination of divisions in football, the reconfiguration of schedules, and higher travel expense for schools. The Sun Belt expansion targets in Conference USA would be faced with a large price tag to leave. Exiting Conference USA schools owe 2 years of distribution and must buy out the conference grant of rights. A total expected to be at least $5 million and as much as 10. All right, so that's where we are. All right. And again, I say, if they wanted La Tech would be it. La Tech wants it. The Louisiana schools want La Tech in. The others do not. And when I mean the others, I'm guessing most of the others. Maybe Southern Miss wants in, although some people have said that they don't. Presume Arkansas State wants them in because they're close as well. But the East does not. We've certainly heard from the Thundering Herd contingent. They don't want any part of Louisiana Tech, all right, at all. And so that would be my thing. So the one thing that I have, it's obvious that all of a sudden, where we thought, and I keep on using the plural, I thought, that the Sun Belt would move expeditiously. It's a big word for a Wednesday in July. They are moving deliberately. All right, they're going to take their sweet time with this, if they move at all. That's a possibility. They just may stay with 13 for now, and they may not, because this is not even going to be until, I guess the 26th season, but you're going to get to the point where it may not even be until the 27th season. So there may not be any rush to move at all whatsoever. And again, I'd say if they wanted La Tech, they would have announced La Tech. Maybe not on Monday, but they certainly would have announced them on Tuesday. Meanwhile, you have La Tech welcoming in the two newest members of Conference USA, Delaware and Missouri State. Louisiana Tech tweets out officially welcoming the University of Delaware Blue Hens and Missouri State Bears to Conference USA. No limits on us, which would be hilarious if, they turn around and join the Sun Belt. But again, that's what I would say. If they wanted to be in, they'd be in. All right. So still doesn't appear that they have the votes to me. But it also appears that the Sun Belt, not acting emotionally, I guess, has decided we need to slow play this to see what our options are and to see how other schools play. As we mentioned, maybe Memphis does get a split and goes into one conference for football and another conference for everything else. That may work. Again, these things fall apart fast. This is how we got here with the Pac-12 to begin with. All right. And so some things come out of the blue. Those schools join the Big Ten, and then the other schools join the Big 12, and all of a sudden you're left with Oregon State and Washington State joining forces with Fresno State, Colorado State, and Utah State, and now Texas State. So things change fast. I agree with the folks saying East Carolina ain't taking a pay cut to come to the Sun Belt. Well, no kidding, but they may not have much of a choice. That may be the situation. All right. So that's where we are right now in terms of what's going on. And it is a holiday week. People are gone already. All right. It's not even the 3rd yet. And people are, hustling out of town for what's going to be a long weekend. And already we're 3 weeks to go, less than 3 weeks to go before Sunbelt Media Days. At this point in time, I'd be surprised, pleasantly so, if something happened before that. I'm not sure that's going to happen. Be interesting to know who else has contacted the Sunbelt for coming in. That's what I want to know. Someone suggested Sam Houston. That's not the worst of all ideas. Right there, not too far away from the Cajuns. All right. Houston market, obviously. Texas market, that may have been worth to stop Texas State from leaving. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it does feel like, again, reiterating, if La Tech wanted in, they'd be in. Someone's stopping them, or many people are stopping them from coming in. It feels like when you read Ross Dellinger, and it says several possible expansion targets were discussed, most notably Louisiana Tech. That sounds like you had, well, we'll just spit it out, ULM trying to convince others to vote for Louisiana Tech, and they didn't get the votes. That's what it sounds like to me. All right. It could be, this is where we are. Let's take the holiday. We'll come back on Monday or Tuesday, and maybe they vote them in. I'd be surprised if that's the case, because, again, if they wanted them, they could have. All right. That's the way I'm looking at it with Louisiana Tech. But otherwise, it just feels like they have, I think, prudently, coming up with big words here on Locked On Sunbelt, slow playing this. All right. Instead of jumping into that and making a foolish mistake, because you're seeing a lot. It's certainly not 50-50, but there's obviously pro Louisiana Tech, and there are some people that do not want any part of Louisiana Tech in the Sun Belt. All right. I would be in the pro Louisiana Tech, but I certainly understand why they do not want it. All right. See how easy it is to talk out of both sides of my mouth? I'm very good at it. But I understand why ULM wants it. They want it for the financial reasons. I want it for the Cajuns rivalry reasons, but certainly understand why the rest of the conference is not interested. It does not help the conference as a whole at all. So I certainly understand that. All right. The other big thing that's come up due to this and due to the 13 teams is the divisions. Go with divisions or don't go with the divisions. We'll tell you about that after I tell you about Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a Monarch puts you in rivalry. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. So the other topic that has come up here is the divisions or no divisions. And everybody is like, well, nobody else has divisions. Why should the Sunbelt keep them? I think that's unique. I think it does keep the rivalries going. And it also keeps a team that may not be in it. And how often has it happened? Now I have to go through the standings where the top two teams, so to speak, are in one division. Did we have that a couple years ago when it was JMU and Coastal Carolina? So, I mean, worked out perfectly last time. Marshall and the Cajuns each 7-1. All right. 2023. Let's see how long this takes to get going. James Madison 7-1, Troy 7-1. Didn't that work out well? Now, here's the difference, right? App State was 6-2. The rest of the West was bad. Texas State was 4-4. So Troy beat up a little bit on the West, but still, Troy and James Madison had the two best records, but James Madison couldn't go still in 23, so App State went. All right. But that doesn't have to do with divisions. That had to do with James Madison making the jump to full FBS. All right. So 2022, you're going to get the same thing. Coastal Carolina was 6-2. James Madison 6-2. You had Troy and South Alabama both 7-1. All right. Troy beat South Alabama. They go. Coastal Carolina was tied with James Madison. They go. James Madison beat Coastal Carolina, but still James Madison trying to make the jump, so they were prohibited from playing. All right. So we still haven't run into a situation where the two top teams were from the same division. Although I guess technically, you're going back, Troy and South Alabama were both 7-1. Coastal Carolina and James Madison were 6-2. So technically, South Alabama got screwed, although South Alabama had Troy at home. Beat Troy, you're in the game. All right. I'm not making divisions because you couldn't score a touchdown against Troy. That's not right. All right. Let's see where the other ones. All right. So what was 21? Cajuns 8-0, App State 7-1. That worked out. All right. 20 is COVID. We're not going to look at that. 19. All right. Cajun 7-1, App State 7-1. I mean, are we at a spot here where the divisions have not worked out? We've talked about 1 year so far. 18. 18 is one of those years. 18, Troy was actually in the East. They were 7-1. App State 7-1. The West was the Cajuns, and Arkansas State were 5-3. So you got to go all the way back to 18, where there was a huge delineation outside of that aberration with Troy and South Alabama. It doesn't really happen in the Sun Belt. I like the divisions. I'm not. This is how nuts I am. I'd keep the divisions, even if it was 6-7. I'd keep the divisions, and then you just have an extra crossover opponent for, in this case, I guess, the West. You'd have to have another crossover division foe. All right. So that's a little bit more travel for some foe. Oh, well. I like the divisions. I think they're unique. I think it keeps the rivals going. It gets more rivals in the West where there just aren't that many rivals. Right? It's kind of like the Cajuns and Southern Miss are the rivals. South Alabama and Troy are rivals for sure. All right. And maybe South and the Cajuns are a little bit. It used to be, when I first got here, it was kind of the Red Wolves and the Cajuns. That may have been more, well, eventually the coaches, Hudspeth and Blake Anderson, did not like each other. All right. And so maybe some other coaches in there as well were not fond of each other at all. But there isn't a whole lot of rivalries. There's more rivalries in the East than in the West. And they say, well, you just keep a couple of rivalries. Maybe the SEC did that. But then you're not going to get some other teams. You're not playing your big-time secondary rival in many years. So I like the divisions. I know other people would rather not have it that way. You know, went all the way back to 18. I skipped 20. We had a grand total of 2 times in the last 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 6 years where, you know, it had an issue. And I don't know what happened in 18, but I can tell you what happened when South Alabama didn't win it. They had Troy at home, you know, score a touchdown and you win. You know, So I'm pro divisions. I like it. I think some of the coaches did not. I think G.J. Kinne was not a fan of it. He actually asked me. I said, that's how I actually keep track of the quarterbacks. He kind of liked that answer. And I think Ricky Ronnie liked the divisions for the rivalry. I think he liked the divisions. And again, I think it does keep some teams playing. If some team gets off to a bad start, all of a sudden you look up and like, we're one game out for a division title. And it keeps you going. I like the divisions. That's the way I see it. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. And we have been getting a ton of comments. All right. So we did make it cost me a little bit more money, although accommodations are complimentary. So that's pretty nice through the Bourbon World. So we are, and again, I'm talking in the plural, I'm heading to Sunbelt Media Days. Really looking forward to that. We will talk about that right after this. Again, thank you again. More than 80,000 views in June. Off to a great start in July. Probably hurt myself a little bit by not having this up at 7, but that's okay. And we will keep on talking about what's going on in the Sun Belt. We're getting towards the part of doing a handful of radio shows outside of the market. So it's continuing to grow. We're going to be close to 2,200 subscribers by the end of the week. And again, if we keep on growing like we have been, we're going to be close to 2,500 subscribers by football season. So I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Again, don't get anything for the clicks, not to mention you're not clicking anything when you just listen to the video on X or Twitter. I do get something for the podcast. Not going to lie about that. So please subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget about the audio on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Really do appreciate it. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, so finally locked in, pun intended, my trip to Sunbelt Media Days. Wasn't going to be necessarily easy, but something made it a little bit easier. I do get a bunch of days off. I'm very fortunate where that is. We get to pick them, although I don't take a lot of days off. Last year I worked a half a year, and I'm not sure I took any days off until the end, and then you get to use some, carry them over, but you only get to carry over 5, and I think I only used 4. So why not use them? All right. And obviously I'm using some this week. We celebrated Mama Schultz's 85th birthday, went to Charleston, came up in April. So I used a handful, more, maybe 2 handfuls. All right. But this turned out to be, we got our schedule for the rest of the year. Like literally, I know exactly what days I'm working throughout the rest of the year. And so Monday and Tuesday, I'm off for Sunbelt Media Days. I only needed to ask off for Wednesday. Much easier to ask for 1 day off than 3. Also, it's a Wednesday. Not a bit. We will have some people in, but not necessarily, I'm not asking for a Saturday off in July, which is tough to get. So once that happened, I saw that. Then I asked, someone offered me their place in New Orleans, which is going to save me some money. So that's great. So once I saw I had the days off, I asked for the place. I got the place. That's going to save me a few bucks, obviously. So that was big. So once I got the place, I asked for the day off, got the day off. Then I had to make sure I did sign up for the last day for Sunbelt credential. Not that I think they wouldn't have given me one, but I did confirm that. Then I got the airplane tickets. Here was the problem with the airplane tickets. Getting down there was no problem. Coming back was the issue, right? You don't want to go down there for just 1 day. That seems a little bit like a waste. So the problem was coming back. All the flights coming back from New Orleans leave first thing in the morning. You want it in the mid-afternoon, right? So there was one flight about a month ago coming back at 5. I don't care about getting back late and getting up the next day. That doesn't bother me. But the idea was to stay for as long as you can. I have now a 3 o'clock flight, so I'll be able to stay all day Tuesday and all day, not all day, but half of the day on Wednesday, leave after lunch. Maybe I can grab some coaches and players during lunch who I'm not going to get on Wednesday afternoon. All right. And just squeeze them in. So I'm going to get 3/4 of the players and coaches. All right. It'd be nice to get new coach at App and Dell McGee and Bob Chesney. And I haven't had Dez on. That's kind of disappointing. But I think the West goes first, and then the East. So we'll see. Dell McGee is going to be on in the afternoon, and I'm not going to get him. So that's going to be disappointing. But we'll get as many as we can, and that will lead. And I feel like it's a little bit early this year, being the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd. So that's going to give us a week to 2 weeks full of content that I can just put up here, until preseason camp starts, right? So that's why I'm looking forward to it for the better part of 2 weeks. It just gives content, and it also puts, I've never met Bob Chesney in person. Tim Beck was the one who actually said, we're going to see you in New Orleans. I'm like, oh, maybe I need to start thinking about that, right? And they all say, thanks for what you do for the Sun Belt. They all like coming on. I had a chance to talk to Coach Gibson. We actually had about a 10-minute conversation afterwards. It was great. So everybody who comes on likes coming on. It is, let's be admitted, it's a 20-minute puff piece interview. This is not a hard-hitting interview. We have some fun with the guys, right? Like, what do you know? What do you know, and when did you know it? GJ Kinne about the Pac-12, not knowing that it would turn into what it did, right? And we always ask the same question: who's your starting quarterback? Type of deal. And when do you like having that answer? Some give us, heading into camp would be nice, as soon as possible into camp. We're probably not going to know until 2 weeks beforehand, right? We're going to find out who the starting quarterback is when we take that snap, right? I remember Hudspeth telling us that. When you're going to find out? When they leave the tunnel on, opening day. So, and so it'll be nice to finally, meet some guys in person. Obviously, have had Charles Huff on, Mike Decimo, GJ Kinne, right? That'll be an interesting interview, because it's all going to be about him focusing this year on this, but yet now he's recruiting. He's not recruiting to the Sun Belt. He's recruiting to the Pac-12. And when he starts recruiting juniors, it's now recruiting to the Pac-12. Now, not only is recruiting Texas, well, now he can go into Southern California and start recruiting there. Now he can go into Northern California and start recruiting there, right? He can start plucking some kids from Washington, maybe. You want to come down to Texas and play football? We can bring you in from Oregon. Do you want to come down to Texas and play football? So all of a sudden, his scope has widened. I don't think it's going to be an all-on onslaught there. You can't spend that much money doing that, but you may be able to pick and choose some. So it'll be an interesting conversation with GJ Kinne. And I'm interested in getting to know Dell McGee, because I think Georgia State's going to improve this year. If they get to a bowl game, that's a huge improvement. I would look for the kind of improvement this year that we had in ULM with Brian Vincent last year. All right. I think where we saw what happened with Georgia State last year, and Georgia State was, a unique situation where you are getting there. Spring football has already started, right? You're not getting there in December when you're putting your staff together, and they revamp the whole staff. So you could take a big jump, but that big jump could be 5 wins. If you get to 6 wins, if you get to a bowl game, and we'll just say it right now, Dell McGee in Georgia State gets to a bowl game, he could be coach of the year. All right. They're picked. They're basically picked last again. My magazine's not here, but they're picked towards the bottom of the East. And if they get to a bowl game, that's going to be impressive. So those kind of things. Right. And then, what is Major Applewhite doing without, Gio Lopez, and how that whole process went, right? Because he told us, if something's coming, just let us know. I presume Gio Lopez let him know, because Gio Lopez said he was staying. And then how do you turn down $2 million a year for 2 years? And it's Coach Belichick, right? I would figure that Major Applewhite said, let me help you pack. Best of luck, kid, right? Make sure the check's cash, that type of thing. And you move on, right? And you move on. And maybe, he can use This is how you do it. We had clear conversations with Gio. He was always open, came into spring ball, raring to go. And, things changed, not with us, but it's a different situation, right? North Carolina had no idea they were going to get Bill Belichick. And all of a sudden they get Belichick and he makes a phone call and, you can't turn that down, right? It's not only Belichick, but it's $4 million. I don't know what kind of pro prospect Gio Lopez is, but he's going to, I know there's taxes involved, but he's still going to end up with $2 million or something like that. Hopefully he's not giving 20% away to the manager, right? Hopefully that's, that's a lot of money. That's $800,000. If he's giving that away to the agent, that's too much money. It should be like 5%, maybe less, nonetheless. But this is where we want to talk about. And then you got, Mike Desimo coming off championship ball game loss, but now kind of the talent's finally turning over. He's had the same kind of quarterbacks for the last few years, and now it's finally Walker Howard, where doesn't have a lot of experience, but he's got a lot of talent, at least in theory and allegedly. So really looking forward to getting down there, talking to the new coaches, talking to the veteran coaches, seeing where they think the Sun Belt is going, see if they like the divisions, see what changes they would make, right? The Big 12 decided not to put out a preseason poll. I think people are making a big deal about that because, we take the preseason poll with a grain of salt, right? With all the transfer portal stuff and everything like that, these coaches don't even know their own team, right? If you're bringing in a half a dozen or a dozen guys after spring, you're not sure where they fit, right, come Labor Day. How do you know how the other team is? You don't. You're basing those picks on, I presume, who the quarterback is, if it's a new coach, and how they played last year. And it has nothing to do with if you know their team or not. So Big 12 didn't do it. Presume the Sun Belt will do it, and we'll see where those picks land coming up. But really looking forward to it. It'll be in and out. And here's going to be the funny part. And it's not going to be so funny. The plane, Southwest, flying, I think, to Orlando and then to New Orleans. No big deal. The flight home is going to be interesting. The flight home is going from New Orleans to Denver. Then I got a 45-minute layover. Good luck with that. Then I'm flying back to Louisville, which I don't really mind as long as everything is on time. We'll see. All right. Probably not going to do the carry-on. I'll worry about the luggage later. We can worry about the luggage later. All right. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. May or may not have a podcast over the next couple of days, whether there's news or not. The family, the Schultz-Palooza 25 is going to kick off mostly tonight and over the next few days. So we'll see if we get a chance to do it. If there is news, I will sit down and do a podcast, but I'm not sure there's going to be too much news over the next couple of days. So enjoy the holiday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely we'll be back probably on Monday with a new episode of Locked On Sunbelt. Have a happy 4th of July, everybody.